The afternoon in the cafe was busier than anyone expected. The sun was bright outside and people kept walking in, looking for a cool place to sit and enjoy their late lunch. The door opened every few seconds, the bell above it ringing non-stop. Emily, the young waitress with soft brown hair tied in a messy ponytail, rushed from one table to another. She carried trays filled with drinks, plates, and orders, trying her best to keep a smile on her face even though her legs already felt tired. She had been working since morning, and the lunch crowd had been harder than usual today. But Emily was used to challenges and she always tried to stay polite and calm no matter what customer came her way. Inside the cafe the noise was loud. Cups clinked, chairs scraped against the floor, and people chatted as they waited for their food. The air smelled of fresh coffee, warm bread, and fried snacks. Emily loved that smell even when she was exhausted. It reminded her of why she worked here. She liked serving people and she liked making them feel welcome. She took a deep breath and forced a bigger smile before walking to the next table. At a corner table near the window sat a large man wearing a simple gray shirt and dark jeans. He was quiet, calm, and didn't bother anyone. Emily noticed him earlier when he came in alone. He looked familiar, but she didn't focus on it too much because the cafe was too busy. Now she passed by him again, and he nodded politely when she placed his drink on the table. She didn't know this was Big Shaq, the man many people recognized from TV and interviews. She only saw him as another customer who treated her with respect. Emily wiped the table, took new orders, and apologized to a few customers about the delay. No one blamed her because they could see how hard she was working. Her manager was in the kitchen trying to catch up with the long list of orders, and the other waiter had called in sick, leaving Emily alone on the floor. Her running shoes squeaked on the tiles as she moved quickly, balancing a tray in one hand and holding a menu in the other. Sweat formed on her forehead, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. She needed the job and she wanted people to leave with a good experience. Big Shaq watched quietly as Emily worked. He noticed how polite she was even when customers looked annoyed. He saw how fast she moved and how patient she remained. He respected that. People who worked hard always earned his admiration. He could see she was struggling, but she never let it show in her behavior. She smiled at the children, joked kindly with elderly customers, and bowed her head respectfully even when someone spoke to her with a raised voice. He could also see she was tired, really tired, but she pushed through. Emily took a moment to catch her breath near the counter. She leaned forward on her arms and whispered to herself that she could survive the rush. Just a little longer. She reached for a glass of water, took 2 quick sips, and then hurried to the kitchen window to pick up the next order. The chef gave her a sympathetic look, but he didn't have time to say anything. The tickets kept printing one after another. Everything inside the cafe seemed normal, busy, loud, but friendly. The kind of afternoon rush people expect in a popular place. No one knew that in just a few minutes, something would happen to change the atmosphere completely. No one knew that the peace in the cafe would soon be broken by someone who didn't care about kindness or respect. And no one knew that the quiet man at the corner table would soon stand up and shock everyone with his reaction. For now, Emily moved with her usual rhythm. She placed a tray on a stand, adjusted her apron, and approached a family who needed extra napkins. She laughed when a small child dropped his spoon and cried. She bent down, picked it up, cleaned it, and gave it back with a warm expression. Moments like these made her forget about the rude customers she sometimes faced. She liked making people smile. It gave her a small sense of comfort in her tiring day. The customers continued eating and talking, and the staff continued running around. The cafe felt alive. Outside, cars passed by, people walked their dogs, and the city continued moving as usual. Inside though, something felt slightly tense, like a calm before a small storm. Emily didn't notice it yet. She was too focused on moving plates and writing orders. But Big Shaq sensed it. He had a strong instinct for people, and he could tell when someone with the wrong kind of energy walked into a place. He didn't know who it would be, but he could feel the shift in the air. Emily hurried past him one more time, and Shaq gave her a gentle smile. She smiled back, grateful for any kindness she received today. She didn't know that this same man would soon change her entire day. She didn't know he would be the one to stand up for her at the moment she needed help the most. For now, she only knew that she had work to do, and she continued doing it with all her effort, unaware of the storm that was about to enter through the cafe door and the unexpected hero sitting quietly in the corner. The peaceful rhythm of the cafe broke the moment the loud motorcycle engine roared outside. It wasn't a normal sound, it was aggressive, long, and meant to grab attention. People inside looked toward the window as the noise grew sharper. Emily paused mid-step, holding a tray with 2 glasses of lemonade, her eyebrows tightening for a second. She didn't know who it was, but the sound already made her heart beat a little faster. She hoped it wasn't the type of customer who brought trouble. The last thing she needed was more stress in an already busy day. The door swung open so hard that the small bell above it slammed against the wooden frame. A man wearing a black leather jacket walked in with heavy steps. His boots hit the floor loudly and every eye in the cafe turned toward him. He had messy hair, dark sunglasses even though he was inside, and tattoos covering his forearms. He didn't smile, didn't greet anyone, and didn't even slow down. He walked straight to a table in the middle and dropped himself into the chair like he owned the place. Emily took a small breath and whispered to herself that she just had to be patient. A difficult customer was still a customer. She placed the lemonade on another table, smiled politely at the couple sitting there, and headed toward the biker with her notepad ready. As she approached him, she could smell the strong scent of gasoline and cigarette smoke on his clothes. Before she could say anything, the biker took off his sunglasses and slammed them on the table. He didn't look at Emily. Instead, he scanned the room as if checking who was watching him. People quickly looked away, pretending to focus on their food. But Big Shaq, sitting in the corner, watched silently with calm eyes. He didn't react, but inside he kept an eye on the man's behavior. Emily reached the table and gently asked, "Hello, sir. What would you like to order today?" The biker looked up slowly, his expression already annoyed. "You took long enough," he said loudly. "I've been waiting." Emily blinked, confused. She had walked to his table only seconds after he sat down. But she didn't argue. "I'm sorry, sir. It's a busy afternoon. Can I get you something to drink first?" The biker leaned back, looking her up and down in a way that made her uncomfortable. "Yeah," he said, dragging out the word. "Get me a coffee. And make sure it's hot. Last time I was here, the coffee was cold." His voice sounded angry, sharp, and intentionally loud so others would hear him. Emily nodded quickly, trying to stay polite. "Sure, sir. I'll bring it right away." As she turned to leave, the biker made a loud chuckling sound and called after her, "Try not to spill it, sweetheart." A few people in the cafe exchanged awkward looks. Emily kept walking, but her cheeks grew warm. She didn't like the name he used or the way he said it. Still, she forced herself to breathe normally. She had dealt with rude customers before. Maybe this man was just having a bad day. At the counter, Emily prepared the coffee, her hands steady but her heart slightly tense. She wondered why some people came out in public just to spread negativity. She wished she could avoid such customers, but this was her job. She needed to stay calm. When she returned to the biker's table with the coffee, he didn't even look at her. Instead, he continued tapping his boots loudly against the floor. Emily set the cup down gently and said, "Here you go, sir." The biker suddenly grabbed the cup, sniffed it like he was testing it, and made a loud, insulting laugh. He slammed the cup back on the saucer, causing some coffee to spill. "Is this a joke?" he said, raising his voice enough to make everyone look again. "This is barely warm." Emily's heart dropped. She knew she had just poured the coffee seconds ago. "I'm really sorry, sir," she said softly. "I can make another." He cut her off. "No. You go bring the manager. I'm not dealing with someone who can't even serve a simple hot drink." Her throat tightened. She looked helplessly toward the counter, knowing the manager was overwhelmed in the kitchen. But before she could move, the biker continued speaking. "You know," he said loudly, "a job like this doesn't need much skill. But clearly even that is too much for you." The room fell silent again. Forks stopped moving. People stopped chewing. Emily stood there frozen, her eyes watering slightly despite trying to stay strong. She had faced rude comments before, but something about the biker's tone was crueler, sharper, meant to hurt. Only one person did not look away, Big Shaq. He watched with a calm but serious gaze, his jaw tightening just slightly. He didn't move yet, but the moment was coming. The cafe could feel it even if no one said it out loud. Emily finally whispered, I'll bring the manager," and turned around slowly. As she walked away, the biker smirked proudly as if humiliating her made him feel more powerful. He had no idea that his behavior had been noticed by the wrong man, the very wrong man. And he also didn't know that his loud entrance was only the beginning of something he would soon regret more than he ever expected. Emily walked toward the counter with slow steps, trying her best to hide the trembling in her hands. She blinked a few times, forcing back the tears that threatened to fall. She hated crying at work. She hated feeling weak. She hated that one rude man could break the small confidence she carried through her busy shift. Behind her, the biker leaned back in his chair with a proud smirk, enjoying the quiet attention he had gathered. He didn't look ashamed, not even a little. Instead, he looked satisfied like he had just won some cruel game. At the counter, Emily took a deep breath. Her chest felt heavy, but she still tried to fix her posture. She wiped a small drop of coffee from her arm and picked up a fresh cup. She whispered softly to herself, "It's okay. Just breathe. You can handle this." But even her own voice didn't convince her this time. Big Shaq watched everything. He noticed the way Emily's shoulders dropped, the way her steps slowed, and the moment her smile faded completely. Something inside him tightened. He didn't like seeing people get bullied. He didn't like seeing someone attacked for no reason. And most of all, he didn't like seeing a hard-working person being embarrassed in public. Meanwhile, the biker looked around the cafe, making sure people were watching him. His fingers tapped loudly on the table, like he wanted the entire place to know he was in charge. He grabbed the spoon, spun it around, and then dropped it on the floor intentionally. When Emily came back with the fresh cup of coffee, she noticed the spoon on the ground. Before she could bend down to pick it up, the biker raised his voice again. "Really? Now the spoon is dirty. Can't you even bring simple clean things?" Emily inhaled sharply, forcing herself not to react with anger. "I can get you another spoon right away, sir," she said softly. But he wasn't finished. "Unbelievable," he said, shaking his head so dramatically that people at the next table flinched. "You people never learn. I ask for something simple and you mess it up again and again. You people." The words stung Emily more than the insults. She felt small, helpless, and embarrassed as everyone stared. Some customers looked sorry for her. Others looked uncomfortable. But no one said anything. No one stood up. No one defended her. Except one man. The chair in the corner creaked softly as Big Shaq shifted his weight. He watched carefully, waiting for the right moment. But he didn't stand up yet. He wanted to understand the full situation before stepping in. He believed in fairness, even when dealing with someone who didn't deserve it. Emily picked up the dirty spoon from the floor, careful not to make a sound. She placed it on her tray and turned toward the kitchen to get a clean one. But before she took 2 steps, the biker raised his voice again, intentionally louder this time. "Hey!" he shouted, making everyone jump. "I'm talking to you." Emily froze. Slowly, she turned back toward him, gripping the tray tightly against her chest. "Yes, sir," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You really don't know how to work, do you?" he growled. "Maybe this job isn't for you. Maybe you should just go home and let someone more skilled take over." His words hit her like a punch. She had been working at the cafe for almost 2 years. She wasn't perfect, but she always gave her best. She needed the job. She needed the money. And she needed respect, something he refused to give her. A soft gasp traveled through the cafe when the biker suddenly stood up. He leaned toward her, his face only inches away. "Look at me when I talk to you," he snapped. Emily's legs shook. She lifted her eyes slowly, terrified of the anger burning in his. Big Shaq's fists tightened. The biker continued his cruel speech. "You think smiling is enough? You think people come here to watch you mess up? No. We pay for service. And your service is trash." Emily's breathing grew fast and shallow. She looked around the cafe hoping someone, anyone, would step in. But everyone stayed frozen. Some looked away. Some lowered their heads. Some whispered softly but made no move to help. The biker smirked again, enjoying the fear on her face. He leaned closer. "Don't stand here like a scared bird, girl. Go get the manager now. I don't want to see your face in front of me again." The tray in Emily's hand slipped a little. She caught it just in time, but her fingers were shaking so badly the cups rattled. Her voice trembled as she whispered, I'll get him." As she stepped away, her vision blurred slightly from the tears she refused to let fall. Each step she took toward the kitchen felt heavier. Her heart felt crushed. She wondered why she always had to deal with people like him. She wondered why life seemed so unfair at times. Big Shaq's eyes followed her, and that was the moment he knew something had crossed the line. People could be rude. People could be loud. But humiliating someone repeatedly, for no reason, in front of an entire room, that was something he could not ignore. Back at the biker's table, the man laughed loudly, slapping his hand on the table so hard the plates shook. He looked around, expecting others to laugh with him. But no one did. The silence in the cafe grew heavier, and he looked proud of the chaos he created. He thought he had won. He thought no one would challenge him. He thought the waitress was alone. But his victory was about to end. Because the quiet man in the corner had finally seen enough. Emily disappeared behind the kitchen door, and the cafe fell into a heavy, uncomfortable silence. Everyone kept eating, but no one tasted their food anymore. The biker leaned back in his chair, proud of what he had done, tapping his fingers on the table like he owned the whole cafe. He believed he had scared the only person who dared speak to him. He believed he had total control of the room. But he didn't notice that someone else was watching him differently. Big Shaq sat still in his corner chair, but his calm expression had changed. His eyes, usually gentle and relaxed, had grown colder. His jaw was tight, and the spoon in his hand bent slightly from the pressure of his grip. He wasn't angry because the biker acted tough. He was angry because the biker chose the weakest person in the room to attack. A person who had done nothing wrong. A person just trying to survive her shift. Shaq didn't like bullies. Never had. Never would. He slowly placed the spoon on the table and wiped his hands on a napkin. His movements were controlled, almost quiet. But inside him, a storm was already building. He replayed every moment in his mind. The biker's loud insults, Emily's shaking hands, her sad eyes when she walked away, and the silence of the cafe when no one stood up for her. Shaq breathed deeply once. That was all he needed to decide. The biker, meanwhile, was unaware of the danger sitting only a few meters away. He picked up his coffee cup again and sniffed it like he expected it to smell bad. Then he made an exaggerated face of disgust, hoping people were watching him. Some were. But they weren't admiring him. They were watching because they sensed something else now, something changing. It wasn't Emily's sadness anymore that filled the air. It was a growing tension, a quiet pressure, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Shaq leaned back slightly, studying the man as if trying to understand him. Why he enjoyed hurting others. Why he used cruelty to feel powerful. Why he needed attention so badly that he would embarrass someone innocent. The biker suddenly raised his voice again, even though Emily wasn't there anymore. Where is she? How long does it take to get a manager? He shouted. This service is a joke. A few customers flinched at his tone. An elderly couple lowered their eyes. A young lady shook her head softly in disapproval. A father told his two children to stay quiet and keep eating. But Shaq didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He simply observed. The biker tapped the table loudly. Hello? Anyone working here? He said mockingly. Or is everyone as slow as that girl? That was the final straw. Shaq slowly reached for his drink and took one last sip, as though giving himself time to calm down. He had always believed that words were stronger than fists, and respect was stronger than noise. But some people only understood one thing, a firm boundary. He placed the cup down. He wiped his mouth gently. He pushed his chair back. The cafe went silent. Not because they saw him move, he hadn't yet, but because they sensed something was about to happen. Shaq stood up slowly, his tall, strong figure rising from the chair like a shadow stretching across the room. The biker noticed something shift in the air and turned his head slightly. But he still didn't understand what, or who, was behind him. Shaq walked forward with calm steps. Heavy, steady, and purposeful. Each step echoed in the quiet cafe. People looked up, confused but hopeful. They didn't know him personally, but they felt something safe in his presence. The biker heard the footsteps and glanced over his shoulder. When he saw Shaq coming toward him, his smirk faded a little. Just a little. Shaq stopped a few steps away from him. His voice wasn't loud or angry. It was quiet, but deep enough to shake the room. You need to stop. The biker blinked. Excuse me? Shaq looked him directly in the eyes. You heard me. Stop talking to her like that. The biker scoffed, trying to recover his confidence. Who are you? Her boyfriend or something? Shaq didn't smile. I'm someone who doesn't like bullies. The biker laughed loudly, but his laughter sounded forced this time. Man, this is none of your business, he said, waving his hand. Sit back down and let me deal with the staff. Shaq stepped closer. The biker leaned back instinctively. It became my business, Shaq said slowly, the moment you started humiliating someone who did nothing wrong. The biker swallowed. His fingers twitched nervously on the table. He didn't know who this man was, but he could tell he wasn't someone to play with. People in the cafe watched silently. Some held their breath. Some recorded with shaky hands. Shaq continued, his voice steady as a wall. She works hard. She shows respect. And you treated her like she's not even human. The biker opened his mouth to reply, but nothing came out. Shaq lowered his head slightly, his eyes sharp. Say one more disrespectful word, he said slowly, and I promise, you will regret it more than anything today. The cafe remained frozen. The biker didn't speak. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. Because for the first time since he walked in, he finally understood. He had messed with the wrong man. The biker stared up at Shaq, frozen for the first time since he entered the cafe. His confidence leaked away slowly, like air leaving a punctured tire. He tried to straighten up in his chair, but something in Shaq's presence made it impossible. It was not just Shaq's size. Many men were tall. It was the silence around him, the heavy seriousness in his eyes, the quiet strength that filled the room like a giant shadow. Shaq didn't yell. He didn't threaten loudly. He didn't swing his fist. He simply stood there, and the biker's arrogance began to crumble piece by piece. The biker cleared his throat. Look man, I was just trying to get service here, he muttered, trying to sound casual but failing. His voice cracked slightly. Shaq didn't move. You got service, he said calmly. You just chose to ruin it. The biker looked away, pretending to fix his jacket. He didn't respond. His fingers twitched nervously on the edge of the table. Shaq took another step forward. The biker flinched. The cafe was silent, but everyone's heart was beating fast. People looked at Shaq with a strange mix of fear and respect. Parents pulled their children closer. The elderly couple leaned forward as if watching history unfold. A few young men whispered, "That's Big Shaq. It has to be him." They weren't wrong. Meanwhile, inside the kitchen, Emily wiped her eyes quickly before stepping toward the door. She didn't want her manager to see her crying. She didn't want anyone to see her crying. She tried to steady her voice as she asked, "Can you talk to a customer? He's really upset, I think." The manager, covered in flour and stress, sighed heavily. "Give me 1 minute, Emily. 1 minute. I just need to finish plating this." But before he could finish, voices rose from the cafe. Emily froze. She recognized one voice immediately, the biker's. "No, hey man, don't get closer." Emily felt her heart jump into her throat. She pushed open the kitchen door slightly, peeking through the gap. What she saw made her breath stop. Shaq stood towering over the biker, who now looked much smaller than before. The biker's eyes darted around the room, looking for support, but no one was on his side. Every customer he tried to impress earlier now looked at him with disappointment or disgust. Shaq leaned slightly forward, but his voice was still calm. "Apologize to her." The biker blinked rapidly, confused. What? Shaq didn't repeat himself. His stare alone told the biker that he had exactly one chance to fix what he had broken. "Apologize," Shaq said again, slower this time, "to the waitress you insulted." The biker swallowed hard. His throat felt dry and his palms were sweaty. He wasn't used to being confronted. He wasn't used to someone stronger standing up to him. He wasn't used to feeling small. He tried to laugh it off. "Man, come on, it was just a joke." Shaq's eyes narrowed. "A joke?" he said quietly. "You call humiliating a young woman in front of a room full of strangers a joke?" The biker shook his head quickly. No, I didn't mean it like that. I was..." Shaq cut him off. "You weren't funny." The biker's lips parted, then closed again. He had no comeback. Shaq continued, his voice as steady as stone. "You embarrassed her. You made her feel unsafe. That's not funny. That's not tough. That's not something a decent man does." The room felt even quieter, like the air itself listened. The biker's mouth trembled. "I didn't know she would take it like that." Shaq raised his chin slightly. "She didn't take anything. You forced it on her." The biker lowered his head. He had no defense left. Shaq took one small step back, not in retreat but giving the biker a chance. "Stand up," he said. The biker hesitated, then slowly rose to his feet. Shaq didn't touch him. He didn't need to. He pointed toward the kitchen door where Emily stood half hidden. "Go to her," Shaq said. The biker's face flushed red. "In front of everyone?" Shaq's voice deepened. "Yes, in front of everyone. You harmed her in front of everyone. You will apologize in front of everyone." The biker looked around, seeing the many eyes watching him, judging, waiting, expecting. He felt smaller than he ever had in his life. His legs shook slightly as he took slow steps toward the kitchen door. Emily pushed the door open a little more, unsure if she should step out or stay hidden. Her eyes were wide, her heart racing. She had no idea what was happening, but she felt the tension, the shift, the sudden change in energy. When the biker stopped in front of her, the entire cafe held its breath. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then finally whispered, I'm sorry." Emily blinked. She didn't trust what she heard. Her fingers curled against her apron. The biker cleared his throat and spoke louder. "I'm sorry for what I said earlier. I shouldn't have talked to you like that." Emily's eyes softened, but she still said nothing. The biker forced himself to continue. "I was wrong." Shaq nodded once from behind him, watching closely. Emily finally found the courage to speak. "Thank you," she said softly. A wave of relief passed through the room. Some customers even smiled. A few nodded approvingly. But the biker wasn't done learning. Shaq stepped forward again, his presence strong but controlled. "Good," Shaq said. "Now go sit down." The biker obeyed immediately, something he probably had never done for anyone before. He sat quietly, no longer tapping, no longer smirking, no longer acting like the king of the room. And for the first time that day, he finally felt the weight of his actions. He finally felt regret. The cafe slowly returned to movement, but nothing felt the same. People whispered softly, stealing quick glances at Shaq and the biker. The tension hadn't left, it had only shifted, settling into a heavy silence around the biker's table. He sat stiffly, staring at his hands, replaying the last few minutes in his mind. Every word Shaq spoke felt like it was still echoing inside him. His heart thumped hard, not from anger but from embarrassment and fear. For the first time he felt what Emily had felt earlier. Across the room, Shaq walked back to his table calmly, as if he had simply gone to ask for more napkins. But inside he wasn't calm at all. He was holding his anger tightly, controlling it like someone holding back a powerful wave. He didn't want to scare the entire cafe, and he didn't want to turn the situation into something violent. He just wanted fairness. He wanted respect. He wanted Emily to feel safe again. Emily stood near the kitchen door, unsure of what she should do next. Her hands were still shaking a little, but her heart felt warmer now. She couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. She couldn't believe someone stood up for her so strongly, with so much courage. She wiped her eyes again, took a breath, and stepped out slowly. As she walked toward Shaq's table, a few customers smiled at her softly, offering silent support. Someone whispered, "You did nothing wrong." Another person mouthed, "Are you okay?" Their kindness surprised her. She nodded shyly and kept walking. Shaq looked up as she approached. Emily whispered, "Thank you." Her voice cracked slightly, but she wasn't crying anymore. Shaq smiled gently. "You didn't deserve that. Anyone could see that." Emily's throat tightened with emotion. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to cause trouble." "You didn't," Shaq said firmly. "He did." Emily lowered her eyes. I'm sorry you had to get involved." Shaq shook his head. "Don't apologize for someone else's behavior." Those simple words hit her deeply. They were warm and honest and strong in a way she had never heard before. She nodded again, slowly this time, as if absorbing the lesson. Meanwhile, the biker sat in uncomfortable silence. His face was red and a deep crease formed between his eyebrows. He lifted the coffee cup, but his hands shook too much, so he put it down again. Each passing second made him feel more exposed, more ashamed. A small group of customers sitting at the back whispered loud enough for him to hear. "He really crossed the line earlier. Did you see how he shouted at her?" Good thing someone stepped in. The biker's cheeks burned hotter. He had always been the loud one, the strong one, the kind who expected people to fear him. But now he felt like the weak one. Alone. Judge. He didn't like this feeling at all. Shaq took a sip of his drink and let out a long breath. He thought the situation was ending peacefully, until the biker suddenly stood up again. Chairs scraped loudly as people turned their heads. Emily froze mid-step. Shaq's eyes narrowed instantly. The biker lifted his hands in the air. "I didn't come here to fight," he said loudly, but his voice was different now. It had no anger, no confidence, no pride, only guilt and frustration. "I came here to eat and relax, and I just messed everything up." Emily swallowed hard. The biker rubbed his forehead. "I wasn't trying to hurt her. I swear I wasn't." His voice cracked. I don't think before I speak sometimes." Shaq stood up again slowly. Not threatening, just attentive. Watching. The biker looked around the room, lost for words. I'm not good with people. I talk stupid. I act stupid." A few customers softened slightly at his tone. The biker turned toward Shaq. I'm not proud of what I did. I know I looked like a jerk." Shaq didn't respond. He wanted the biker to reach the truth on his own. The biker continued, struggling with every word. "When you told me to apologize, I realized how bad I was making her feel. I didn't see that before." His voice grew lower. "I don't always see things." Emily felt her chest tighten again, but not from fear now. Something else. Something human. The biker wiped his face quickly, almost embarrassed to show emotion. "I shouldn't have talked to her like that. Or anyone. It wasn't right." Shaq nodded slowly, but his face remained firm. "So what are you going to do next time?" he asked. The biker hesitated. He looked at the floor, then met Shaq's eyes. "I'll think," he said. "Before I talk. Before I act." He turned toward Emily. "And I'll never treat someone like that again." There was silence. A real, genuine silence, not tense, not afraid, but thoughtful. Emily stepped forward bravely. "Okay," she said softly. "Thank you for saying that." The biker nodded, relieved but still shaken. Shaq looked between them both. There was no anger left in his eyes, only calm strength. "Good," he said. "Then let's all move on." The cafe exhaled together, like a giant sigh of relief. And for the first time since he walked in, the biker didn't feel powerful. He didn't feel tough. He didn't feel above anyone. He felt human. And sometimes, that was the lesson life forced on people, whether they wanted it or not. The cafe slowly returned to its gentle rhythm, but everyone could feel that something powerful had just happened, something they would remember for a long time. The air was lighter now, as if the heavy cloud that hung over the room all afternoon had finally lifted. People whispered to each other softly, sharing their thoughts in careful voices. Some were amazed. Some were touched. Some simply felt grateful that kindness still existed in the world. Emily walked back to the counter feeling different. Her steps were lighter and her breath felt deeper. She was still shaken, but she wasn't broken anymore. The biker's apology had helped, but Shaq's presence, that strong, calm, unshakable presence, had changed everything. For the first time in a long time, she felt protected. She felt seen. She felt like someone had stood up for her when it truly mattered. She reached for a clean cloth and wiped the counter slowly, her mind replaying every moment. She remembered how small she felt when the biker yelled at her. She remembered her fear, her tears, her shaking hands. And then she remembered the moment Shaq rose from his chair like a giant wall of strength, blocking the biker's cruelty like a shield. Inside her heart, something warm began to grow. Shaq finished the last sip of his drink and stood up to pay. When he approached the counter, Emily looked up and gave him a shy smile. "You didn't have to do all that," she said softly. "I know," Shaq answered, placing the money on the counter, "but someone had to." Emily looked down for a moment, touched by the simplicity of his words. Sometimes the strongest actions did not come from anger, they came from calm, honest humanity. A few customers approached Shaq, offering a handshake or a quick word. "Thank you for stepping in. That man needed someone to stop him. You did the right thing." Shaq accepted each comment with a nod, but he didn't bask in praise. He wasn't proud of creating a scene. He was proud of protecting someone who deserved peace. The biker remained seated at his table, staring into his coffee. The cup had gone cold, but he didn't care. He was lost in his own thoughts. The earlier pride he felt had dissolved into uncomfortable self-reflection. No one had spoken to him like Shaq did before. No one had challenged him in a way that made him question himself so deeply. He wasn't used to feeling small, but maybe he needed to. After a few minutes, he slowly stood up and walked toward the counter. People watched carefully, unsure of what he would do next. Emily noticed him approaching and instinctively held her breath, her fingers tightening around the cloth. But something about him had changed. His posture was softer. His eyes were calmer. His voice was low when he spoke. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" he asked Emily. She hesitated for a second but then nodded. The biker scratched the back of his neck, searching for words. "Look, earlier, I wasn't myself." Emily raised an eyebrow gently. "Who were you then?" He looked ashamed. "Someone I shouldn't be. Someone I don't want to be." Emily didn't reply. She waited for him to continue. He looked down at the floor. "When Shaq stood up to me, I realized something. I realized I've been treating people badly for a long time. Not just here. Everywhere. Because I thought that acting tough meant I was strong." He exhaled deeply. "But he showed me the opposite." Emily listened quietly, surprised by his honesty. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said, glancing up briefly, "but I'm really sorry. For everything." Emily softened. "You apologized already. That's enough." He nodded slowly. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." He turned to leave, walking toward the door with slower, heavier steps. When he opened it, he paused for a moment and looked back at Shaq. The biker lifted his hand slightly, almost like a salute. A quiet gesture of respect, from one man learning to grow to another man who taught him how. Shaq nodded back. Just once. The biker stepped outside, climbed onto his motorcycle and rode away, not loudly this time. The engine softened before fading down the street as if even the machine understood the change inside him. The cafe fell silent for a moment. Then, slowly, something beautiful happened. People began clapping. Soft at first, then stronger. A gentle applause that filled the room, not for Shaq alone, not for the apology, but for kindness, for fairness, for courage, for the small victory of goodness over cruelty. Emily covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed. She looked at Shaq with watery eyes. Shaq shook his head gently. "Don't thank me," he said. "Just promise me one thing." Emily blinked. "What?" "Don't let people like him make you forget your worth." Emily inhaled sharply, feeling his words settle deep inside her like truth she always needed but never heard. "I won't," she whispered. Shaq smiled, warm and genuine. "Good." He picked up his things, gave her a final nod, and walked to the door. As he stepped outside, the sunlight caught him perfectly, like the world itself was highlighting the moment. The cafe door closed behind him, but the memory of what he did stayed behind, living in every person who witnessed it. No violence. No chaos. Just courage. Just respect. Just humanity. And that was the moment the entire cafe knew. This wasn't just a story about a rude biker or a tired waitress. This was a story about standing up, quietly, firmly, fearlessly, when it mattered the most. The afternoon sun slowly dipped lower, sending warm light through the cafe windows and casting long shadows across the floor. Even though the rush had ended, no one felt like leaving. Something in the air made people want to stay a little longer, as if they were part of a moment bigger than their usual day. Emily wiped a table near the window, replaying everything that had happened. Each time she thought about the biker's words, a small ache returned to her chest. But each time she remembered how Shaq stood up for her, that ache softened and turned into something gentle, something almost comforting. The manager finally stepped out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. He had missed the entire confrontation. When he saw the strange look on everyone's faces, he asked, "What happened out here?" Everyone laughed a little, soft, tired laughter, but no one tried to explain. It was a moment you had to witness to truly understand. Emily approached him. "Everything's okay now," she said. "Really?" He narrowed his eyes, trying to read the truth. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Yes. It's handled." The manager sighed, relieved but confused. He gave her shoulder a light tap. "If you ever need help, don't hesitate to tell me." Emily smiled politely, but inside she knew something. No manager could have handled what Shaq handled, not the way he did. She walked back to the front counter and looked outside. Shaq was already far down the street, walking calmly, disappearing slowly among the people and cars. He didn't wait to be thanked or praised. He didn't turn back for applause. He wasn't a hero who wanted the spotlight. He was the kind of hero who helped quietly and then walked away. Emily watched until he disappeared completely. Nearby, a young boy whispered to his mother, "Mom, that man was like a real-life superhero." His mother smiled. "Yes, sweetheart." But the real magic was that he used words, not fists. The boy nodded thoughtfully, as if learning something important. Meanwhile, at the back of the cafe, the elderly couple who had witnessed everything sat with softer expressions. The wife whispered, "I haven't seen courage like that in years." Her husband nodded slowly. "It's rare, but it still exists." Employees from the kitchen came out, curious about the odd atmosphere, but no one wanted to spoil the feeling by retelling the harsh parts. Instead, people shared small pieces of the story: Shaq's calm voice, Emily's bravery, the biker's apology. The story spread in little circles, from one table to another, until everyone felt connected by the experience. Emily continued working, but every few minutes, someone called her quietly. "Are you all right now? You handled yourself well. You didn't deserve that. You're stronger than you look." Each compliment surprised her. She didn't feel strong earlier. She felt scared, cornered, and helpless. But now she realized that people had seen her strength in ways she couldn't see herself. That made her stand a little straighter. A teenage girl approached her shyly. "Miss, can I tell you something?" Emily smiled kindly. "Sure. I want to be like you when I grow up." Emily blinked in shock. "Me? Why?" "Because you stayed kind," the girl said softly. "Even when someone tried to break you." Emily felt tears rising, but this time they were warm tears. Happy tears. Tears that felt like healing. She hugged the girl gently. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means a lot." At the biker's old table, the empty cup still sat there, cold coffee in it, untouched since the moment Shaq confronted him. The staff didn't rush to clear it. For some reason, that table had become a quiet symbol, a reminder of how quickly cruelty could be stopped, how fast a bad moment could turn into a life lesson. Two customers who had recorded the event on their phones shared looks, unsure whether they should post it or keep it private. One of them said, "Maybe the world needs to see people standing up for each other again." The other nodded. "But only if it doesn't embarrass the girl. She deserves respect." Emily overheard part of the conversation and smiled. It was nice to hear people thinking of her feelings. As she wiped the last table, she paused for a moment and closed her eyes. The memory of the biker's harsh words still stung, but another memory was stronger, Shaq's voice saying, "Don't let people like him make you forget your worth." Those words became a small anchor inside her heart. They made her feel braver. They made her feel grounded. They made her feel proud. When the cafe finally began to empty, the manager turned off one row of lights. "Long day, huh?" he said to Emily. She nodded. "Yes, but a good one, in the end." He tilted his head curiously. "Good?" Emily smiled softly. "Because I learned something today." "And what's that?" he asked. She glanced at the door where Shaq walked out earlier. "That sometimes," she said, "strangers protect you better than people you've known for years." The manager nodded thoughtfully. Emily looked around the cafe one last time before clearing the biker's table. She picked up the cold cup, the unused sugar packet, and the spoon. Then she whispered to herself, "And sometimes, the world surprises you in the best way." The cafe was almost peaceful again. But deep inside her heart, a powerful change had already begun. The day slowly moved toward evening, and the cafe lights grew softer, glowing like warm stars against the fading sunlight. Emily finished the last few tasks before closing, stacking menus, wiping the counter, and arranging the chairs neatly. Her body was tired, but inside her heart, something new had awakened. It felt like courage. It felt like worth. It felt like a reminder that even on the hardest days, goodness could appear unexpectedly. The cafe door opened with a soft chime and an older woman walked in. She held a little girl's hand, probably her granddaughter. The woman smiled warmly. "Are you still open?" Emily nodded. "Yes, of course. Please come in." The woman and the girl sat near the window. Emily brought them water and took their orders. But before she could step away, the woman touched her hand gently. "Dear, are you all right?" Emily blinked, surprised. "Yes, I'm okay." "I heard what happened," the woman said softly. "People outside are talking about a big man who stood up for a young waitress." Emily's cheeks warmed. She wasn't used to attention, not good attention at least. The little girl smiled up at her. "Grandma said a superhero saved you." Emily laughed softly. "Something like that." After serving them, she walked back to the counter, feeling her emotions swirl again. She thought about the biker. She thought about Shaq. And she thought about the people who chose kindness instead of silence. Suddenly the cafe door opened again, but this time the sound was slower, hesitant. Emily turned and froze. It was the biker. But he wasn't the same as before. He didn't swagger. He didn't stomp his boots. He didn't drag attention to himself. He stood quietly near the door with his hands in his pockets, looking almost out of place. When he saw Emily, he lowered his head slightly, like he wasn't sure if he was welcome. Emily felt her heartbeat speed up, not from fear this time but from uncertainty. Slowly she approached him. "Can I help you?" she asked softly. The biker nodded awkwardly. "Yeah. I just wanted to do one more thing." Emily waited. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. The edges were slightly crumpled, as if he had held it for a long time before coming in. He placed the envelope on the counter and pushed it gently toward her. "What is this?" Emily asked politely. I wanted to make things right," he muttered. "I know an apology isn't always enough. So, this is for you." Emily slowly opened the envelope. Inside she found a small handwritten note and a folded bill. Her fingers shook as she read the note. "Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry I hurt you. This isn't payment. This is respect. Mark." She looked up. "Your name is Mark?" He nodded, embarrassed. "Yeah." Emily didn't know what to say. She unfolded the bill. It was a $50 note. Her eyes widened. "I can't take this." "You can," Mark said quietly. "It's not money for the cafe. It's not for the order. It's for your day, the one I ruined." He looked down again. "I want you to use it for something good. Something for yourself." Emily felt tears gather in her eyes, not from pain this time but from shock. This was not the same man who had shouted at her earlier. This was someone trying to grow. She gently pushed the envelope back toward him. "I accept your apology," she said softly, "but I don't need the money." Mark swallowed hard. "Please." Just accept it. It helps me feel like I've done at least one right thing today. Emily looked at him again, really looked at him. She saw the regret. She saw the effort. She saw the change. Slowly she nodded. Okay, I'll take it. Mark closed his eyes briefly, relieved. Thank you. He stepped back toward the door, his shoulders less tense now. Before leaving, he turned around one more time. You're stronger than you think, he said quietly. Don't let people like me change that. Emily smiled softly. People like you can change too. Mark gave a small nod, almost grateful, and walked out into the evening light. This time his motorcycle didn't roar. It hummed gently as he drove away. After he left, Emily returned to the counter. She placed the envelope in her pocket, not for the money but for the message inside. Her manager walked over. Was that the same guy from earlier? He asked, shocked. Emily nodded. Yes, but he's different now. The manager raised his eyebrows. What changed him? Emily looked toward the window where the sky was painted in orange and gold. She imagined Shaq walking somewhere out there, calm, peaceful, unaware of the lasting impact he had made today. Someone showed him the right way, she whispered. The manager nodded softly. We need more people like that. Emily agreed. As she finished closing the cafe, she thought about how one horrible moment had turned into something unexpectedly beautiful. A stranger had protected her. A bully had changed. And the whole cafe had witnessed something powerful. That kindness can be loud. That bravery can be gentle. And that respect can transform someone completely. When she stepped outside and locked the cafe door, the cool evening breeze brushed against her face. She closed her eyes and smiled. Today had started with fear, humiliation, and pain. But it ended with courage, healing, and hope. And somewhere far away, Big Shaq walked under the fading sunlight, never knowing how deeply he had changed someone's life, and how deeply that story would live in the hearts of everyone who saw it. Sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they don't shout. Sometimes they just stand up, quietly, firmly, exactly when someone needs them. And that was the day Emily learned. One good act can change many hearts, instantly.